some of you, I'm sure, so feel free to ask anything. And yeah, I hope you take away a few things. And I think the main thing that I would love for you all to take away is that where your money is invested and the impact it has on the world is a huge power that belongs to all of you. The money in your pension is yours, after all, and that money does have an impact on the world. And there are things, pretty easy things and small things that we're trying to help people do to make sure that money is harnessed for good. So if you take away one thing, it's that you can have an impact and your money can have a positive impact on the world. So yeah, I'm Izzy Howden. I'm Campaigns and Policy Advisor at Make My Money Matter, and we're a campaign group raising awareness and driving action around the power of our money, in particular our pensions at the minute, and how it can have a really positive impact on the planet and the environment and our climate. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, just so you've got a bit of a presentation. You don't have to just look at me. Hopefully that's all good. So yeah, firstly, I'll start with why pensions. We get a lot of questions from people on what do pensions have to do with the climate? Why are we a campaign group, around pensions? People kind of are often a bit confused. And there's three main reasons why we campaign on pensions and their impact on the planet. So firstly, there's basically this disconnect we've realized when we were founded. The campaign group was based on basically trying to connect people more with their pension, and a lot of people don't actually realize that their pension is invested, and they also don't kind of make the connection that it's actually their money. For a lot of people, they just see their pension payments on their payslip and they don't really think about it. They think it's something for the future, for when you're older and when you're retiring, and they don't actually realize that their pension that belongs to them is actually invested in things, and often those things harm the planet. So as a campaign, we set out to highlight this and to get people really thinking about that. And two of the things that we, in our research and kind of the work that we've done, that we've discovered that we want people to really kind of be aware of how their money impacts the planet is, firstly, that often their pension is invested in fossil fuels. So we did a kind of piece of research that found that the UK pensions industry enables 330 million tons of CO2 every year. That's the same as the UK as an entire country, which is quite astounding. And then secondly, another kind of focus area for us is that pensions are often invested in companies linked to deforestation. So a new piece of research we released about a month ago, and that we're kind of having this campaign around, is that 2 in every 10 pounds of your pension is linked to deforestation, which is a huge amount of money. And considering people don't realise that their pension is invested and that it's often going to these practices that are harming the planet, we want people to know that there's things they can do about that. So that's the kind of first reason why pensions. The second one is the scale and opportunity of the pensions industry. In the UK, it's 2.7 trillion pounds of UK savers' money in the pension sector, and globally that's around 50 trillion US dollars. And if that money was all harnessed for good and working for the planet instead of going into investments that are destroying the planet, the potential there to really have an impact and avert the kind of climate catastrophe that we're currently kind of hurtling towards is pretty immense. And we saw at COP26 in Glasgow last year, and the kind of conversation around transitioning to net zero, there's a real kind of space and a real need for finance to be part of that. So there's this scale and opportunity. And then thirdly, it's just the individual impact. The reason pensions can be so powerful in greening your pensions, and the reason we're so passionate about this campaign, is because individuals can actually have a really big impact. We conducted a piece of research last year, and we found that if you green your pension, you can reduce your individual carbon footprint 21 times compared to giving up going veggie, giving up flying, and switching to a renewable energy provider. So the opportunity for impact on an individual level is really enormous. And a lot of us in our everyday lives are making changes. You know, we all recycle, some of us are veggie, things like that. And we don't really think about money as part of kind of the toolkit that we as individuals can use to kind of live more sustainably. So that's a real aim of the campaign, is for people to start thinking about their money in this way. So hopefully that makes sense of why we're a campaign around pensions. And a bit about who we are and what we do. So we kind of have three main pillars of our work, and the first one, and I'd say the primary one, is the public campaigning. So we want to raise awareness among UK savers and make them understand and take action on their money and where it is and how it's impacting the world. And as I said before, kind of generally people don't think of pensions as something that's fun and that accessible and something that they really want to think about, or that they're that conscious of how it impacts the world. So one of the key things we want to do is use creative storytelling and get people excited about the power that it has and really make that connection between people and their money. So I thought this was a nice time to show you all an example of how we do this. And I'll just share my screen to see if I can do a smooth transition to my first video. So this is a piece of content that we shared. It's been viewed millions and millions of times, and it really helps us tell this story in a fun way that people are going to remember and kind of help them want to take action. So I'll just play that for you all now.
On behalf of the global logging industry, I just wanted to thank people like you for collectively investing hundreds of millions with us. Your pension funds, no matter how quickly, all add up. With your continued investment, you can do even more. Your money is literally changing the world.
So yeah, that was a video we did around deforestation when we first launched around a year and a half ago with Jason Isaacs, who obviously plays this evil deforesting man. And it's those kind of things we found that really resonate with people and speak to them in kind of different ways about a topic like pensions that often feels a bit impenetrable and a bit inaccessible. So I'll just share my screen back to the presentation. Has that worked? Yeah, I think it has. And so the kind of two other pillars of our work, the other one is business engagement. We engage with a lot of businesses of various sizes up and down the country who are starting to think about their pensions as a core part of their sustainability policies. And we have a Green Pensions Charter that currently has over 70 signatories from huge brands like Comic Relief and Tesco and WWF, who are all pledging to start the process of greening their pension and also committing to engaging with their employees around the power of their pensions and kind of being part of this movement. And we found that's a really good pressure point as well on the industry itself, because you have these huge notable brands that are kind of household names across the country who are part of this conversation and part of this movement around greening pensions. So we found that's really effective. And then the third pillar is that we engage with government and pension schemes on making their pensions better for the planet. And one of the key facets of this for us is that we are calling on the government to mandate on net zero for pension schemes. And the reason this is a core kind of ask that we have and a core bit of the work we do is because if all pension schemes had to be aligned with net zero and not kind of funding things that are destroying the planet and are aligned with the science behind climate change, that would mean that all default funds in any pension that you're in would be aligned to what we need to protect the planet. And the reason that's so powerful is because less than 5% of savers across the UK will switch from the default fund that they're put in, that their pension is put into. So if the defaults are all aligned to kind of the science and are helping the planet, then the mainstream will just be kind of working towards that. And so that's one of the key asks we have as a campaign. And for this year as well, one of the key focuses we have as a campaign is looking back on past 18 months. We've only been around 18 months, and we've seen around £1 trillion in UK pensions in schemes that are now committed to net zero. And moving forward, one of the key bits of work we're actually going to be doing is looking to those schemes and saying, you know, what progress have you made so far and what are your plans for kind of reaching these targets that you set? So not only do we want to make sure we keep getting these commitments from schemes and keep making sure that industry is aligning to net zero, we also want to make sure that they're following through on that. And I think that's a core part of our work and generally in this sort of space. So yeah, and really, so far we've made a lot of progress. We have only been around 18 months, 2 years, and we've achieved quite a lot. I think part of that is because there's not that many campaigns in this space on pensions. There's not too many people talking about pensions. So it feels quite nice that we've kind of come in and managed to make such progress. So what I'll do now is actually show you a video on that, because it's going to explain it a lot better than I probably can. So I'll just share my screen to that for you all.
Izzy, I'm not actually seeing that video. Is anyone else having the same?
Pension.
Ain't no party like a pension party, guys. It's my money, and it's going to work the way I say.
Sorry, I've just seen the comment around the video not working. Was that not working for everyone? Did anyone manage to see that? In any case, what I'll do instead is I'll share the video. I'll share some resources at the end that can be kind of distributed, and I'll share the video in one of that. Okay, yeah, the wonders of Teams and technology. Okay, fab. Let me go back to the presentation then. And so the main thing here really is about how you can take action and how individuals can take action. So I think the main thing to know is that anyone can take action, no matter what kind of pension you have, what age you are, what kind of stage in life you're at. There are things you can do. And even if you don't know what a pension is, or if you have a pension, or who your pension's with, there's whatever stage you are on this journey, you can actually take action and try and start thinking about your pension in this way. So one of the most powerful and easiest things you can do really is on our website. You can contact your pension fund or use the template to contact your employer and let them know that you care about climate change and ask them what they're doing to help tackle it. One of the key things I'd say here is that pension funds generally aren't that used to hearing from their pension holders, and ultimately it's your money. So in sending that email and making them aware that this is an issue you care about and that you want to make sure your money is aligned to, you have real power in doing that. And I think that's part of why people really respond to our campaign, is because it's never something they've really thought about before, and we've made it as easy as possible for people to do that. So I think that's kind of the main thing I would say. And we have a 10-step journey you can go through on the website, depending on kind of where you're at and how much you know about your pension. And in asking these questions, you can really have an impact. I guess off the back of that, and linked to what I was saying earlier about kind of the power of having mandatory net zero, making all default funds working for our planet, not against it, I think a core action you can also take is contacting your MP or any of your representatives, your councillors, and saying that this is something you really care about and you want to know what action they're taking to make sure pension funds and money that belongs to people up and down the UK is, helping the planet rather than destroying it. And then I guess the fun bit really is that you can talk to your friends, your family, your colleagues, spreading the word the fact that not many people think about their pension means that when you have these conversations, you often see people have this kind of light bulb moment and they realize that this is something they want to start taking action on, and they want to integrate into all the other small things they do in their life to live more sustainably. So bringing personal finance and how impactful it can be into the conversation around the environment and climate is really powerful. So starting those conversations can have a really big impact, because if you green your pension and you speak to 3 people and they do, and it's this kind of wider movement that's really begun. And we hope in that's a key pressure point on the industry and government to change and to kind of progress with making the default option aligned to net zero, and make sure those 95% of people that start in their default and that end in their default fund will actually have their pension working to better the planet rather than destroy it. And then finally, a step that you can take, and this is kind of area of campaigning that we're slowly moving into, is around your bank. So if you've greened your pension, you've harnessed the power of that, then the next step you could take is looking at your bank. We will be launching a campaign on banking towards the end of this year, and our key ask is that the 5 biggest high street banks in the UK stop funding fossil fuel expansion. All the science says that we should not be exploring new fossil fuels and expanding fossil fuels, and the 5 biggest high street banks since 2016 and the Paris Agreement around climate change, they've funded well over $100 billion into fossil fuel expansion. So there's a real issue here around banks not actually taking the climate crisis seriously and ploughing more and more money into expanding and exploration on fossil fuels. And that's going to be one of our key kind of campaign asks, is that the biggest banks in the UK stop doing that. So I basically, through this work, I had this realization that the bank I used to be with was doing this, and although it's not my money, and they tend, the money that's in your savings is ring fenced and is invested in certain ways, not in fossil fuels. It was generally the sense of, I don't want to be with a bank that doesn't take the climate crisis seriously. And so I actually switched my bank pretty recently. It was very easy, and I did it kind of through the process using resources on our website, and that led me to the kind of platforms out there that can help you do it very easily. So I'd say that's the kind of other thing that you can look to once you've looked at greening your pension, looking at your bank. And again, that's going to have a big impact in creating this pressure point on banks to actually start taking this climate emergency seriously. So yeah, they're the kind of, I'll start my presentation there. They're the sort of main tools I would say you can use, and they're all on our website. And what I'll do after this, I'll share the videos as well. Sorry that the sound didn't work. And I'll also share a lot of the resources we have on our website. But also people can get in touch with me or anyone from our team, and we're really kind of happy to help guiding people and answering questions. So yeah, if anyone has any questions of any sort, please do maybe pop your hand up or pop in the chat.
Thanks for that, Izzy. I think that's a really good presentation. Lots covered, and I'm sure some stats in there that I definitely didn't know until we spoke a few weeks ago. So probably some new stuff for a lot of people in the chat. You can see we've got a couple of hands up. We've got Sai first. I'm gonna go ahead with your question.
Hello, I'm definitely one of those people you're talking to, because I haven't really been interested in my pension or what happens to it until very recently. And now that I'm trying to find out about it, it's much more complicated than I ever imagined. It's interesting that you said that, or the host of the meeting said that potentially this will be seen beyond the employees of the council and will be seen by residents, because as I understand it, being a member of a local authority pension scheme is different from being a member of a private company's, in that all the decisions about our pension are made by elected members, by councillors. So as I understand it, unless we are employees who live in the borough, and therefore have the right to vote and for and lobby our elected members. We don't have that direct communication with the people who are making decisions about our pension. So in fact, as far as I understand it, it's the residents of Kensington and Chelsea who potentially could influence our councillors to invest our pensions differently. And they have a much greater say, as I understand it, in what happens to our money than we do ourselves. So I guess 2 questions for you. Do you think I'm right about that as an analysis? And if I am, how would you suggest that we, as employees, deal with that challenge?
Good question. Good research, clearly. Good research starting your journey engaging with your pension. So one thing I'd say is yes, all local government schemes are within pools, and not to get kind of too technical, because also this is information I'm still learning. I've only been with the campaign less than a year now, so I'm still relatively new to the world of pensions and sustainable finance. But we have seen pools up and down the country commit to net zero, and we've also seen local government pension schemes themselves commit to net zero. So it is possible, and there's some really great movements of kind of people within boroughs and within local authorities who've begun engaging with their councillors and their pension scheme on this. So I think Natalia's popped in the chat, but I think the sort of action you could take now is emailing your pension fund and asking them what their policy on climate change is and what their plans are for how they invest your money. I think the thing it boils down to, and that we really want to reinforce with people, is that it's your money. Even if it's, you have, in certain pension funds, you have trustees deciding, you have councillors deciding how it's invested, it is your money. So you have every right to ask these questions. So I think that would be the step I'd advise you to do, is that email that Natalia's shared is asked directly of your pension fund there, and ask them how they're investing it and what their plan is for the climate crisis and tackling it.
Thanks, Izzy. And Sai, do you feel like that answers your question? And again, yeah, definitely good research. I didn't know that either.
Well, they publish it all online. I guess each person has to read it online and decide for themselves whether they believe what they read and how convincing it is. I've read it.
Yeah, and you kind of raise a good point here around I now work in this, and I've read pretty much most kind of sustainable investment policies and climate policies of all funds, and often it is very hard to understand. And that's why I think, if you all take something away from today, is that you can ask them and contact them and say, what does this mean? What does this actually mean in practice? A lot of us have our money in pensions, but we don't work in finance or investment, and we need it given to us in information we understand and language we can understand. And I think, I would really encourage you to email them and say, I want to know exactly, do you have a net zero strategy? What is your policy on that? Where's my money going? And because I agree with you, there is the pensions industry as a whole, could be much better at communicating with pension holders, because it's their money, and often it's really hard to find this kind of information out. And to an extent, it shouldn't really be you, Sai, having to do that work, because it's your money that they've got, so they should be telling you exactly where it's going.
Yes, they might tell me, but my question was about how to influence them, because whether I believe what they say or not, and whether I like what they say or not, doesn't seem to change the fact that I'm not one of the people who they're not answerable to me, because as far as I understand it, the council, because it's concerned that if its pension fund doesn't work well, then it would have to call upon its own money, in other words, its residents' money. It feels it owes such a strong duty to safeguard the interests of its residents and electors, that they are the people who have a say about how they invest the money, rather than the people whose money they are investing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you do have a point here, and that's the kind of power dynamic that as a campaign we're trying to shift, because the real kind of power should be with the people who own the money. And it's an interesting point you raise around protecting interest and things like that. And we're trying to start this conversation around, well, actually, investing in things that are destroying the future that we're all saving for is the most detrimental thing of all, because when it comes to accessing your pension, if the world is, the climate catastrophe is kind of in full force, no one could do anything with the money that they're retiring with. So I think you're hitting upon this kind of dichotomy, I guess, of this power dynamic. And I think the thing is you can ask these questions, and if you get a response that's not satisfactory, you can ask them again. And I think contacting your councillor, contacting your MP, going through all these avenues, I think is the first step on that, and see what they come back with. I would suggest.
I'm sorry to be dogged about this point, but I can't contact my councillor. I don't live in the borough. Well, I can contact my councillor, but it's not a Kensington and Chelsea councillor. And because I work for the borough, I can't contact one of the elected members of the authority that I work for. Similarly, I can contact my MP, but it's not a Kensington and Chelsea MP. So that's as I understand it, that's the challenge that we as local authority pension fund members have, is that we don't have a direct route to the people that are making the decisions.
So you will be able to contact the chair of the pension fund. You could also contact I believe this kind of council fund is in the LGPS. So you could contact them as a pool, which kind of has loads of schemes within it, and ask them what their policy on climate is and what they're requiring of their members of the pool to do. It's complex because a lot of the local schemes work in different ways, but there are definitely avenues. And what I'll do is when I share some resource after, I'll do a bit of digging into specifically the routes that you could go down. But I would suggest that the first point of call would be the email that Natalia shared. But I'll do some more research so I can see what's the most effective thing that you could use.
Thanks, Izzy. Yeah, I definitely see your point, Simon, that it's a pretty tricky situation with the way it works for local authorities. But yeah, definitely in terms of contacting the LGPS and then the chair of that seems like a good step. I also think I remember seeing that in the council's climate change plan, which has been recently launched, I'm pretty sure there was a section in there around sustainable pensions. I know that people are thinking about this, so I think just kind of the more people on board, the better, and the more traction that's going to get. Obviously, lots of voices are going to be louder than just one voice on their own. I can see Tom has got his hand up as well. And I can see if you'd like to ask a question. Thanks for waiting.
Thanks, and thanks, Izzy. Yeah, some of it got covered in the chat you having with Sai. I suppose it was after that step 1 or step 2, 3, where you're asking all the questions and you prod and they sort of say, no, there's no sustainability plans, or there is and it's this and we don't think it's sufficient but they do, or some sort of combination of that, where you come away thinking it's not good enough and I want it to change, and people basically aren't changing it. What have you got any advice then? I mean, I suppose I'm thinking it's how do you change the minds or get enough of a movement going so that you are listened to, because obviously, like you said, a lot of pension schemes aren't used to people asking questions, and I suppose theoretically that means they probably don't like doing that now, because they've not been used to it and they're quite comfortable and they think they probably are doing things best. So yeah, there could well be blockages that you come up against. So any advice about campaigning or anything like that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really great point, actually. And some of the most kind of effective local campaigns we have seen in this space are around local government schemes. Again, I can share in the resources with you all. There's certain groups up and down the country that are really effective in bringing these issues up at meetings and general meetings with the pension funds, and they are really effective at getting answers and raising kind of awareness and basically creating a bit of noise around this. So I can definitely share a resource on who they are and how they've done that. And I think, yeah, it's a hard one, because you're right, it's this process you go through, and you're aware that you do deserve a proper reply, and sometimes it's not satisfactory, and it can feel a bit like going through that process. Well, what else is there? And with this kind of LGPS kind of example specifically, what I'll do is I'll try and look at and I'll speak to kind of our team and see what the specific steps for you all could be, if you feel like you're not getting that response and proper engagement from the pension fund.
Great, thank you.
I've got a question actually, Izzy, about so you said you're launching a new campaign around banking and yes, sort of moving that towards more sustainable investments. One thing that I wanted to ask is what's the best way of kind of finding out whether banks that we're using are investing in the right ways? Would it just be to like Google and try and see what we can find? And then also, what are kind of the main elements, do you think, of that campaign that will be coming up soon?
Yeah, so in terms of resource, on banks, there's a lot more out there compared to pensions, because there's a lot of campaigns that really are just focused on banks and how they're impacting the climate. A lot of them are really easily accessible, and I'll share some of my favourite ones that I found most useful. There's an organisation, a platform called Switch It, and they help individuals very easily switch their bank account. There's an organisation called Good with Money, and they compile really useful resources around this. When I was deciding to switch my bank, basically I used the Which top list of most sustainable current accounts, and they have various rankings that they use to come up with these lists and their kind of advice around that. So there's a lot out there. Sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming, just because there's a lot of big numbers and it can feel quite daunting. But I'll share some of my favourite kind of organisations and how they communicate these sort of things, and as well the most useful resources that I've found on that. And then in terms of the things we'll have coming up for that, it's basically later on in the year we're going to start deciding how we communicate this around banks and exactly what we're asking of banks and that sort of thing. And I guess one of the key things is just looking at how individuals relate to who their bank is. I think there's a weird dichotomy we have, where generally a lot of people think banking institutions and finance they don't really relate to, and they can be quite critical of. But then generally every day we all need our bank to just function and to perform our kind of everyday lives, and it's very useful in that sense, and we want to make sure our money's safe and feel that our money's safe. So as a campaign we're looking at how those two factors can interact with the reality that the banks in the UK are funneling an enormous amount of money in fossil fuel exploration, and that goes against all of the science that's out there. That even goes against some of the policies that they outline on their websites, and they agree that the science is real and legitimate, and that's what they supposedly align their climate strategies to. Yet behind our backs, they're funding billions and billions of dollars into exploring for new fossil fuels. So we really feel that there's an opportunity here for people up and down the UK to actually demand better. And, you know, we want to be taken seriously, and it's our kind of, we want people to know what's going on behind their backs with these kind of big campaigns that banks are running at the minute, you know, arguably serious greenwashing around their climate policies, when really there's a lot of research out there that shows that behind that, they're just destroying the planet and trying to find new ways to destroy the planet and new fossil fuels. So that's basically, it should be kind of coming in around December, I think. So when that does, I'll share some more resource with you all.
That would be really good, thank you. Yeah, that sounds like it'd be massively impactful, and I think, as you were saying, just changing the way that people are kind of thinking and relating to their banks sounds like it would be a useful thing to do. I just had a look at that wish list as well of sustainable savings account, and I won't say who I'm with, but I can say they're up there near the top, which is good. So does anybody else have any questions for Izzy while we've got her? But it would also be great as if you can send over all the various bits that you mentioned, and we can make sure that it's sent out to everybody, because it sounds like there's lots that everyone can take away and have a look at in their own time as well. Yeah, any final questions?
I'd also say one of the easiest ways to engage with this is if you are on social media, if you follow our social media, because we basically try and share news updates and things like that in language and ways that are pretty accessible to people. And that was the way I found out about this campaign, was through that and watching videos and that kind of stuff. And I think one of the most powerful things we're able to do is convey the general feeling across the UK about certain things like this. When a few weeks ago, we actually launched a tool on our website that allowed savers across the UK to request that their pension fund divests from Russian investments. We did this partially in response to pension funds divesting from Russia, obviously in light of everything that's happening in Ukraine. And we were able to conduct some polling that found that 87% of the UK population doesn't want their pension money invested in Russian investments. So it's things like that that we're able to, in real time, convey to people and show them through our kind of social media platforms. So I'd say that's one of the best ways to start engaging with this. And I like to think we do a good job at really communicating it in a way that is simple, but also shows you the sort of action that you can take on that.
Yeah, that sounds really good as well. Yeah, I was having a look at your website just before this as well, and I spotted that. It's great that that has been turned around so quickly around the Russian investment. Yeah, recommend that anybody who hasn't takes a look at the website as well. So it's a good website, lots of information on there, and some really useful things people can take away and make use of as well. So I think unless we have any last questions, then I think all good to close there. I said at the start, we'll be uploading this pretty quickly to our website and YouTube, and we'll post a link in the chat to that, so anyone that missed some of it or wants to share it with anyone else can watch it back. And I think Natalia's also just posted a link in the chat, which is for a feedback form. Just give us any feedback on how you found today and any future sessions that you'd be interested in hearing. Thanks so much, Izzy, for your time this afternoon. Really appreciate it, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you all,
Izzy,
and your engagement on this. And feel free to get in touch with any questions if you have follow-ups, and I'll be sure to put some resources together, including a focus on the kind of LGPS and how that works. But yeah, it's been really great chatting to you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.